Should Christian landlords raise their rent just because of inflation? Let's talk about that today. Hey, I'm Tim Kaiser. Welcome to the Profit Dare. On this channel, we provide simple financial solutions that inspire savvy stewardship. If this is your first time joining me, thank you so much for stopping by today. And if you've been here before or a subscriber, blessings to you. Welcome back. So today we're going to do something a little different than what we've done before. We're actually going to react to a video from Dave Ramsey. And on this video, there's a question presented: should landlords feel guilty about raising their rent? And so I'm not going to react to anything he says because it's easy to get down a rabbit hole of disagreement with things. There's really no value in that. All I'm going to do is provide some suggested scriptures that possibly could have been used during the conversation. So let's get into it.
Today's question comes from Dan in Washington, D.C. I'm a landlord who owns multiple rental properties. Over the past year or two, rent prices have seen a big increase. This is great for a landlord, but not so great for the tenant. I know I need to raise my rental rates to keep up with the increased overhead costs. However, this causes direct hardship to my tenants that have been good tenants for the past few years. As a Christian, this is hard for me. I would feel bad if raising rent caused them to have to move after they've made the house their home. I did not get into real estate to subsidize people's living expenses, but I also didn't get into real estate to displace families either. I love investing in real estate, so I don't see myself exiting this field, so I'd like to hear your advice on how to balance this equation.
It is sweet that you've got a big heart like this, and that's a nice thing. And you're not exiting the landlord field. And so you are going to have to learn to balance your faith with business practices that are not dishonoring to your faith. Treat other people like you would want to be treated, okay?
So he actually, at this point, Dave introduces what's commonly known as the Golden Rule. It's a scripture found in Matthew 7, verse 12 in the Sermon on the Mount. And it says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. That part's often left off of the Golden Rule. But it continues on in verse 13 saying, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter into it. But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it.
I lease a building for Ramsey Solutions that is an office warehouse. We're not the owner of it, about 5 miles from where we sit right now, from our buildings that we own. And the lease is coming up for renewal. If the guy raises my rent to market rate, why does that make him a bad Christian? That was a passive-aggressive question. Answer is, it doesn't.
Okay, so the scripture that comes to mind for me right now, and I will actually comment here, and I'm not going to do my best not to comment, but just give scripture, but we should be less concerned with being a bad Christian and focus more on being biblical Christians, right? So a bad Christian is what other people think about us, and really only matters what God thinks about us. But the Bible verse I want to talk about is Proverbs 22:16 that could have been interjected here. One who oppresses the poor to increase his wealth, and one who gives gifts to the rich, both come to poverty, which is a warning from Solomon.
Okay, I own rental property, single-family homes, among many other properties that we own. And if I raise my rent to be market rate, that does not make me a bad Christian. I did not displace the person out of that house if they can no longer afford it. The marketplace did. The economy did. The ratio of the income that they earned to their housing expense displaced them. I didn't cause any of that. And so you are not displacing them. You're taking too much credit for what's going on.
So Proverbs 19:17, whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay them. Once again, I'm going to reiterate, we should be less worried about being a bad Christian and more concerned with being biblical Christians.
If they need to move to a cheaper house because they can't afford, they're going to move to a lesser house. Because if they move, they're going to pay market rent. Now, having said all of that, I've had situations, because I manage the properties with a heart and a head, both. I don't personally manage them, but we do, my family does, that someone is sick. I'll just, I remember one time, a long time ago, a lady had cancer. Am I going to evict someone in the middle of chemo? No, I'm not. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to have clear conversations. I want to know what's really going on. I don't want to be duped by the situation. But on the other hand, I also want to treat other people like I'd want to be treated. That's a biblical mandate. And so if I were in that situation, how would I want to be treated? Well, I'd love some mercy, some grace. But mercy and grace because rents went up in general, and I can't afford to live here anymore because my job didn't go up as much as the much as the cost of a loaf of bread or a gallon of gasoline went up, because welcome to inflation. This is not something you caused.
Proverbs 14:31, whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. So that scripture probably could have been put in there in this conversation.
Now, you didn't cause the cancer either, but that is a temporary thing. This other thing's going to be there forever. That family is never going to be able to afford to live there if they can't afford to live there. It's not going to change. Now, if they come in and they go, I'm getting a raise in 4 months, and here's the contract, can you wait then? Yeah, I'll give them a little mercy.
Awesome.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But this idea that you have to equate Christian and kindness with not having good marketplace experience is not true. It's not a factual way of viewing this.
And you
Proverbs 21:13, sticking with the Proverbs for the most part, whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered.
brought this up with a caller earlier who was kind of experiencing a similar situation, and you said, hey, this is being a good steward of the asset that you are managing. And, he says in the question.
So here the I'm not sure this guy's name is, but he says you being a good steward of the asset. Well, people are more important than assets. And I'm sorry, I told you I wouldn't say anything. Luke 16:9, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself, so that when it's gone or when it fails, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. That is a savvy steward.
That they've made their house, the house their home. It's not their home. It's your home. It'll never be their home as long as they're renting it.
Well, the guy actually that asked the question said that, so it's his house, so he can say whatever he wants to say. Shut up, Tim. You said you wouldn't say anything.
Good point.
And
when you're a renter,
like
you kind of know that.
Yeah.
I've been a renter, and I didn't expect to stay there. I'm passing through. No one that rents, very few people that rent go, I want to be here 50 years. I think I'm just going to stay in your house for 50 years.
No one does that.
This is my forever home. I'm a renter. No one says this.
And honestly,
things that people don't say.
I like taking.
Okay, so no one says this. Proverbs 17:5, whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for his maker. Seems like they're being a little bit condescending at this point with this question.
Looking at situation by.
It wasn't the person who renting the house that brought this up. It was the landlord who brought it up. He felt bad on the front end. It wasn't like someone was saying, hey, you owe me because you're a Christian. He just created a straw man.
By situation and going, is this a true hardship, or is it really, you got to tighten up the budget? And so at that point, I may give them some resources, maybe some Ramsey resources to say, hey, here's the total money makeover. Mm-hmm. I want to help you create that margin. I'd love to keep you as a tenant. You've been great.
And how you interact with them in kindness is fine too. You don't have to be unkind. You don't have to be cold and transactional. You can go, I understand, and it hurts my heart, but I'm doing this with all these things. Now, if you've got a property that's gone way up, maybe you stage it up. And that's how you'd want to be treated if you were there. Treat other people like you want to be treated. But if you really would expect to get to live there on rental rates that are 75% of the market forever, just because your landlord's a Christian, then you've got something screwed in your brain. You really do. That's just not how things. That is not a calling of the Bible. That is not something Scripture calls us to undercharge because we're Christians. Now, we don't need to overcharge.
Well, that's really just not a real good argument on that one. So again, the renter wasn't asking the question. The owner was asking the question. And the Bible does not call us to undercharge. Again, no one was saying that. And the Bible doesn't even talk about charging rent. So that's argument. We can just toss that argument. So here's a few questions to consider for this. What are the implications of raising the rent, good and bad? Because you might have a great renter, and then you might raise the rent and get a bad renter. So from a negative perspective, from a landlord, you could end up having this happen to you. And I know of a person right now I was speaking to the other day. He's had the same place for 6 years, rents a duplex. He just went off through a nasty divorce, and he's alone now. His kids are grown and moved out, and his landlord has not raised the rent in 6 years. Why? Probably because he pays the rent on time. Probably because he's not a hassle. He's probably not having parties, getting the police called on him. So there's an opportunity cost. What could be the negative? If taxes are going up, maybe you're starting to subsidize some more of the cost. If you're have a mortgage too, maybe things are changed. But of course, no one who listens to Dave Ramsey would ever buy rental with mortgage. That just wouldn't happen. But there's that. There are some positive and negatives to that. So, but there's no such thing as an inflation imp coming in the middle of the night and raising the rent. The landlord makes a conscious decision to do that. And the last question I want to ask is, would the renter be more likely or not to come to Christ if the rent was raised or if it was remained the same? So let's think about it that way. Is that an extreme question? Yeah, but we're talking about extreme stuff right now. So if the person's only interaction with the Christian is them being a landlord, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm going to raise the rent because welcome to inflation, is it possible? I can guarantee you that in the end, the salvation of a soul or the kindness to a person is way more important than adding a couple dollars to our bottom line. So there you go. Should landlords feel guilty about raising rent? Hope this has been a blessing to you. I did my best to keep my opinion out of it, but I gave you 7 solid scriptures to go on that possibly could have been used in this conversation. If this has added value, please like, subscribe, share, comment, and I will see you soon with a new video. Until then, may God's blessing come upon you, overwhelm you, and overtake you.